Boom. What's up, everybody? We're here live. Another episode of the McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, as always, Colin McAllister. You guys know. You know by now. And if you don't, welcome to the podcast. This fucking levels here. This episode has been a couple weeks in the making, honestly. This first got triggered by, I think it was the Charlie Kirk, Bill Maher episode where, I was interested in this episode because this is, Bill Maher, somebody who's an adamant atheist, against Charlie Kirk, who's a fundamental Christian. And obviously, if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend it. Like, we're going to go through some of the clips in here, quite a few clips actually, and we're going to just break them all down. But this basically just caused a chain of me just thinking, okay, you know what? It's been a while since I've really talked about the religious stuff. I got my priest get up, priest blood for life, you know what I'm saying? Priesthood for life. Where are my brothers at? My brothers at the church? You know what I'm saying? No, but I thought I would talk about a couple different podcasts, a couple different episodes that have been going on the last couple weeks, kind of that I've talked about kind of some of the same topics. And I thought it would, and it's been something that has been kind of igniting me a little bit, especially with the Pope, being elected. I feel like that side of the aisle has been very loud. The religious Christian side of the aisle has been very loud over the last couple weeks. So I thought it would be productive to kind of give a counter to some of these claims and some of these criticisms, And, as I've stated plenty of times, this isn't me. I know I'm kind of doing the whole get up and kind of making fun of the whole thing, but I'm not the goal isn't even necessarily to offend people. I know I'm going to offend people, but it's really just to take apart the ideas. And, it almost seems futile in a way, though, because I know this episode's going to drop. A lot of people who are religious are going to hear all my arguments and not grasp it. But, I hope that that's not the case. And this is an attempt for me to have that hopefully not be the case. Anyway, so I thought a good place to start. This isn't actually how I intended the episode to start originally. But today, the day I'm recording this, an episode of the Tucker Carlson podcast with Dave Smith dropped. And, I know I said the last episode I don't really care about who goes on Tucker. I lied. I do kind of care. And these are one of the people that I care about. And, because I even honestly feel bad starting the episode off like this. Because Dave Smith, he's someone that I have an enormous amount of respect for. He's really one of the fundamental, if not the fundamental person that really got me into libertarianism and later anarchism. I think during the COVID lockdowns, he was a sensible, truthful voice in that, and I give him all the credit in the world for that. However, one of the thorns, I think this is kind of true of the whole libertarian anarcho-capitalism movement. One of the thorns that is in the side of this worldview is, I think people in that libertarian anarcho-capitalist worldview tend to think because we don't have the state to determine what's moral and what's immoral, we need religion, we need the church. And I disagree with this adamantly, and we'll get into this later in the episode. I think morality is innate. I think, just like if somebody came into my podcast studio and shot me, it doesn't matter what religious denomination you are or whatever your moral set of values is, you're going to intrinsically know that's wrong. And it's actually really ironic because I think the people who are religious will actually be the ones who more so tend to give that moral standing, be like, oh, because of X, Y, Z, this is okay, right? Anyways, that aside, I thought a good place to start would just be Dave Smith's comments about atheism, claiming that atheism is not real, which, as a fellow atheist, as an atheist and someone who is a big fan of his, this really just fired me up today. So I was like, I'm sorry. I love Dave, but we got to open an episode like this because we just have to.
I mean, I would say that kind of ironically, although not really actually ironic, and this kind of goes to, the conversation that you and Brett Weinstein were having the other day, who I really love Brett. I think he's great. Yeah. I'm on your side of that debate, but I think one of the fundamental flaws in atheism is that it doesn't really exist.
Yes.
They think that's the flaw in believing in God.
No.
They think the flaw in believing in God is that God really doesn't exist. God does exist. What doesn't exist are atheists. There's no such thing.
So true.
And you could even get into maybe if there was such thing as atheists, it would be a good thing to be one. But there aren't. They don't exist. They all have their religion. And it's almost by definition that whatever your highest thing is becomes your religion. I don't know if it's quite by definition, and I suppose it is theoretically possible to be an atheist, but almost no one ever is. And so what you're seeing is just that, I'm attacking their religion. And according to them, that makes me guilty of blasphemy.
But it's just so interesting that they're so brittle about it.
All right, pause right here. Here's the problem. I've made a post about this today because he just misses the point about atheism so hard. The set of what you believe in terms of like how one should act morally, or even how your government should operate, is not tied to atheism. I made this point. Let's take abortion, for example. Christians, and obviously I know there are people who, like Joe Biden or whatever, or like liberal Christians who will, have the pro-choice worldview, but also be Christian. That's very contradictory. But I think like the majority of the Christian population would be able to say like, yeah, there's a major contradiction in that. And you could open up the discussion and be like, okay, are they really a Christian, right? Atheists don't have that problem. Atheism is simply just an acknowledgement of we don't believe in God, or the best, like to paint it in the best light, the possibility of God is extremely unlikely. Because we have all these things in science and just like we can see things evolutionarily, Darwin theory of evolution. The whole point of the scientific method is that if you have a theory or something that is proven by science, assuming you have all the tools, you can go out and prove that. And something religion can never do, will never be able to do. An atheist, in terms of like the abortion topic, an atheist can be pro-choice, they can be pro-life, they can think all babies should be thrown into a vat and burned alive. There's nothing about the idea of not believing in God and what your idea of the worldview is. There's no correlation. However, with Christianity and with aligning with a political party, that's part of the gambit. Like, you can't be part of that group without having that. Like, you can be a Nazi atheist, you can be a communist atheist, you can be a Republican atheist, you can be a Democratic atheist. Like, these things are not connected. They're separate. So, and look, I will give Dave credit on this. I do think he is pointing at something which I've also criticized about a majority of atheists, which they do, like, I do feel like a majority of atheists do tend to lean left, but I don't think that that's the same as how it operates with, a political party or Christianity. I just don't find those two things. An atheist, if an atheist disagrees with another atheist on something, they'll still be able to be like, okay, you're still an atheist. Like, you still don't believe in God, but I just disagree with you. But if it's two Christians, and one Christian says, hey, I think abortion is okay, or I think it's okay to throw babies in a vat, it'd be very common ground to say, okay, you're not a Christian. Okay, let's keep playing here, because it doesn't end here.
think if you're an atheist, you'd be like, does it really matter? I mean, there's no right or wrong, obviously, because who's the authority on that? Well, there is no authority, so it's all just a matter of preference, and in the end, you just cease to exist, and so the stakes are zero. So what are you so mad about? Like, why do you care? You'd think...
No, the stakes are not zero, okay? It does matter. Like I said, morality is intrinsic. For that same example I use, if somebody came and shot me, you don't need a religion to know that that's wrong. Bill Maher says this really almost better in another clip where it's like, you don't need a carrot on a stick to do the right thing. You want to do the right thing, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it actually serves you in the end to be a good person, to go out into the world and be a good person. You don't need this. You don't need an authoritative voice to tell you what to do. We're not dogs, okay? We don't need a master to, hey, pull on a leash, right? We're all humans. We're all capable of thinking people. Some more than others, right? But that shit solves itself. And I don't think the people who subscribe to Christianity are like automatically better because of it, or any religion or any doctrine. I don't think that automatically makes them better. I think their actions determine that. Okay, let's keep playing.
Everyone would be like...
Well, I'll take it a step further. Sam Harris does not believe in free will. So what is he upset with me about? I have no choice.
No, you're just
I
an
have to be
actor
a
in his
misinformation
play.
artist. This is what I'm wired to be a misinformation artist, right? So what are you upset with? And he's not even making the choice to say that. Listen, anytime, and this was one of I really, really like Brett, but I think one of the areas where he failed kind of in that conversation with you, in that, very friendly debate, is that he had to say several times throughout.
It wasn't even a debate. It was Brett making points and Tucker moving on. They didn't even debate anything.
Out it. Yes. I live as if what you're saying is correct. But I view things this way. So, yes, I'd much rather live. But if your like thesis involves you having to engage in a performative contradiction, then something's not right with your theory. And so Sam Harris will sit here and say, none of us have free will, but I'm still going to act as if all of us have free will. You've got a major flaw in your theory. That like, this is just too much. This is too far. You can't do that. That's not right.
Okay, that's enough of that clip. But I'm going to go back to a podcast I did with Jason Bonnell, who is the president of the Iowa Atheist and Freethinkers. Really smart guy. We don't necessarily see eye to eye on government, but I think on the atheist stuff, he really gets it. He really nails it down. When it comes to the whole free will thing, first of all, this is almost like the fundamental problem, because like when you're talking to religious people, like they can't think of things outside that scope. So like they're going to take somebody like Sam Harris, who has this view of free will, or that we don't have free will, and he's going to assert that to everyone. The same problem that I was just talking about earlier. I'm an atheist, and I don't know how far it goes, but I think we at the very least kind of have free will. Like things like I'm picking up this bottle, right? And Brett actually makes the same point, well, on a different topic, but like I picked up this bottle because I believe I have free will. Now I understand that like there are, I'm born into a certain situation. There are certain constraints of life. Obviously I can't like be anything I want to be, right? But I think like in that avenue, I still have some freedom of choice, right? And the point, and when me and Jason Bonnell were talking about this, I think a point he made that was really great is like, it's honestly moronic for specifically the Christian religious person who believes that God is the ultimate designer, the ultimate being that created all and has this master plan, that with that, there's also free will. That in itself is a contradictory point. One of the, I'm started reading the Bible, believe it or not. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And I think I'm on chapter 5 or 6 of Genesis. And I've already found like 12 to 15 contradictions, things that don't really add up to the idea of God, or like just things that are just plain immoral. So, I think if you actually lay out Christianity, there's a lot that's, self-contradictory, but that's one of the biggest ones by far. Okay. One last clip on Dave. I don't want to focus too much on him because, like I said, he's my G. Not actually my G, but I really fuck with him. So, God damn it, I knew that was going to happen. Bear with me, folks. I gotta find the point because I couldn't download this one for some reason. So, okay, here we go.
This is what was interesting to me about the conversation with you and Brett Weinstein about about God versus atheism and all this stuff, is that so people, it's very easy to have the framing of going oh, you're telling me you believe there's an invisible man up in the sky who created all things? That's pretty goofy, right? It's yeah, if you just frame it like that, sure, it's pretty goofy. I'm sorry, what's your belief? You believe everything used to fit on the top of a pin and then it exploded into everything? Everything came from nothing and then exploded into... This is just as ridiculous as anything anyone's ever...
No, it's not. It's not as ridiculous. That's actually it for that clip. It's truly not. Here's the thing. In the Bible, I was literally reading this yesterday or the day before. In the Bible, it literally says God opens up the heavens and insinuates in a way that God, heaven is literally in the clouds, literally above earth. That's something that's actually in the Bible. And you know what? No, I don't think the idea of everything starting with a little molecule and growing is that crazy. First, we have way more things in nature and science that could allude to that than the religious theory of God. Think of cells, man. Literally conception. A sperm meets an egg and it multiplies, it grows. And then from that, we have a being, and then that being creates more beings. And it all flows out like a flower. And I mean, that's identical to the idea of the Big Bang Theory, that over an infinite amount of time, even though it's like a 1 in 5 billion or whatever the chance is, it's like if you had, let's see, 5 billion cards, right? 5 billion index cards. And you had a certain number that you guessed. And you went through every card and picked it until you hit that number. That's going to take a long fucking time. It's going to take an infinite amount of time. But you're going to get there eventually. Eventually that's going to happen. That's the idea of the Big Bang Theory. And that's something that is found in that's an idea that connects to nature. And you know what? Atheists we don't need to have an answer. The atheist, the scientific mind, simply acknowledges this is what we know. This is our best guess. The religious person will assert something, will create a story, and that's it. That's all they need. That's all they need. Okay, enough of Dave Smith. I love him, but God damn, he took an L on that. Okay, the first thing I wanted to... Oh, not the first thing. So I kind of So basically the two interviews I wanted to focus on next were the Charlie Kirk and Bill Maher discussion about a couple weeks ago, and then Matt Walsh on Tucker Carlson. Again, good old Tucker. Good old Christian Tucker. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is homosexuality. And let's just... actually, I think Charlie Kirk's probably the best place to start on this.
But lie with another man, that should be everybody's right, don't you think?
We're going to... So, if you can't guess... And honestly, I hate tackling and even talking about this issue because it does seem like such low-hanging fruit to like, if I'm talking to a religious person and they say that they think homosexuality is wrong, or even have worse assertions about that, like something should happen to them because of that, like, I step away at that point because I'm like, okay, well, this is just an impasse right here. Like, if you think that like two people acting consensually is wrong because of what's found in the book, I don't really know how to go from there. Like, that's like you and I just have such different worldviews. Like, here's the thing. Like, I, as an atheist, because I'll say this. Growing up Catholic, I think there was a point where I was honestly homophobic, where I did literally look at homosexuality as something that it bothered me. I thought it was weird and wrong. But then you go to college, you meet some people who are gay, homosexual, whatever, and you realize, okay, these are just normal people who happen to like something different from me sexually. And that doesn't make them bad. That doesn't make them wrong. They're not hurting anyone doing it. Like, again, back to like the scenario I was giving out where like morality is intrinsic. Like that is something intrinsic that like the only way you cannot think that that's the case is if you take everything that you know from a book that tells you otherwise. That's the only way you could come to that conclusion. So anyways, here is Bill Maher and Charlie Kirk talking about homosexuality. This is honestly the lighter part of the that whole subject. So let's
But lie with another man, that should be everybody's right, don't you think?
Personally, you have a right to do what you would like to do personally. Yeah.
With another person.
But I, as a Christian, do not believe
that
would be holy. I think it would be sinful. Yeah.
But
that's a personal I don't want to get too deep, but that's a personal theological.
No, we need
of course
to get
he doesn't want to get too deep into it
because it's so important just to understand. Well, let me ask you what you believe. I believe that some people, a decided minority, maybe 1 out of 20, probably, for whatever reason, that nature, this perfect nature that you describe as perfect.
Well, it was designed perfect. It's all screwed up now.
Okay.
No, I mean, we have disease and we have, all
Right.
sorts of stuff. Got Down syndrome. We got all sorts of
Well,
problems.
then it wasn't designed perfect because it's screwed up.
You know what we believe, Bill. We
I
believe
see.
there was a rebellion and a
Right.
contamination of nature.
Right, because
That is sin.
Right. Okay. If they hadn't eaten the apple,
Well, we actually don't know it's an apple, but yes, it's inferred.
pomegranate, whatever
It very well could have been a mango.
Well,
like this is just a whole other point. Like, God created everything. He's so great. He's so, it's perfect how he created it. But he's also so infallible that man fucked it all up. And like, look, if you want to say God isn't a master planner, if he's just like, if he just happened to be the creator and he's not perfect, that would be fine. But that's never the claim from Christians. Never.
I know. No, don't get me started on mangoes. So,
as they say in West Hollywood, there's nothing like having a mango in your mouth.
it's George Costanza's favorite fruit. But yes, so.
But, oh damn! Now, what was the point?
You were talking. I don't know.
Yes, tell me.
Something about Deuteronomy. Oh, the homosexuality. Is that you want to talk?
Homosexuality.
As we're keeping it on the lighter topics.
Thank you. So about 1 out of 20 people, maybe even 1 out of 10. I don't know. And then people will say there's a spectrum. Maybe there's that too. Of course, there is. Some people are like, what the kids call zesty. Not gay, but kind of on the waiting list. Okay. But let's say just gay. Like people who are just not attracted to the opposite sex. They're attracted and want to have sex with people of their own sex. Would you agree that that happens in nature?
Yeah, of course it does. Yes. There are instances of species in the animal kingdom that do that.
Absolutely.
I acknowledge this.
And we are in the animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're number 1 with a bullet. Okay, so given that we both agree that that's a phenomenon that exists.
There's other things that happen in nature that aren't so good too. But just, yes, that's correct.
Like on a par with this?
No, I'm just saying, just to say that it happens in the species of the animal kingdom doesn't make it necessarily morally okay.
Yes, it does. It's consensual. If it's not, if some like animal's raping another animal, then the morality isn't the fact that they're gay. The fact is that they're raping them and not having consent. Like, no, you can't just say like, oh, well, not everything that happens in nature is good. That's not the fucking point, dude. It doesn't, honestly, it doesn't even matter whether it happens in nature. Like that's just such like a low thought, low IQ point to just throw out, oh, well, in nature it doesn't happen, or it happens in nature, but people also kill each other in nature. People also, animals steal from other animals in nature. Yeah, the stark difference is that one of these is wrong and one of these isn't. And you don't need the Bible to figure that out. You just don't. That's intrinsic. Anyways, I feel like I'm just going to be talking in circles for a lot of this, but
what's
it's important.
immoral about fucking in the ass? What I don't understand why the ass in itself, ipso facto, is immoral. It's just an ass. And the fact that some people want to fuck in there, I've done a million jokes about it. I don't get that. I mean, it's where the shit comes out. I just don't get it. If I was gay, I'd find another way. But that's just me. But they do want to do it. Why is there a moral dimension to this?
Again, I believe Scripture is God-breathed. It's what the Bible says.
Okay, because the Bible says.
Yeah, I do. You're correct.
And this is just this is the point. This is why I'm doing this. Because religious people need to understand when you get to this point where there's a logical fallacy in your worldview, and your response is, it says the book. I think he even says it later in this clip or a different clip. Like, it is intellectually embarrassing. I do agree with that. Like, you are trading off your brilliance, if you have it, your logic, and you're taking the easy way out. Just taking all the onus off you. I don't have to think about this issue. Even though I, as Charlie Kirk, have a podcast and I proponent this worldview to millions of people, and then they share that same worldview, and then, it's like the same as like racism, right? Like, if you were like spewing, if I was on this podcast saying like, I hate black people, I hate brown people, whatever, I hate gay people, like, that would have an effect. And I'm not saying that he should be like held liable for that or responsible for that, but it matters. It matters. It's important to call it out. It's important to think about it. If you're going to make these assertions, but you're like, if you're going to talk all the logic, like and it's amazing. He literally went from making a logical point. I mean, it wasn't logical, but it was this attempt of logic to say, but it doesn't happen in nature. And then literally less than a minute later, he said, but it's in the Bible. I agree with Bill Maher. It's intellectually embarrassing. Okay.
But you do know, like, the, argument from people like me, that kind of logical argument, is that, well, these books were really not written by a god. They were written by men, and it reflected...
Well, of course they were transcribed by men,
reflected the primitive views of people in that era who would, of course, have had primitive views. They also didn't understand germs or atoms. So their views on this were primitive, and they believed that there was something... wrong with that I get it, that it was different than most of the people in the tribe, that, these two guys are going off and doing it, but that we can, as sentient beings now, logical, intellectual beings, recognize that this was from a long time ago, and now it's just something that happens in nature, that some people want to fuck this way and some people want to fuck this way, and there's no moral dimension to it and no reason to call it a sin.
Again, Christianity just disagrees with that. So, I mean, it's the only sin that God destroyed a city over. So, I mean.
Yeah, God's great. He mass murdered a bunch of people because he didn't like them fucking in the butt. Yeah. Glorious, gracious God. Oh, boy. Okay. And honestly, this
What does
clip,
the child have a right to?
this clip pisses me off even more than that. Because, I wanted to stay like in topic with some of these things, or some kind of flipping back between these podcast episodes. But Matt Walsh went on Tucker Carlson and right off the bat of the podcast made the claim that not only is it not ideal for a kid in the foster system to have gay parents, it's actually wrong. And that child has a right to actual parents. And let's just play the clip before I even get into this. But, guys, I'm playing producer by myself, so I apologize.
What does the child have a right to? And I would say a child has a right to a mother and a father. A child has a right to the basic fundamental setup that billions of kids throughout history have had, which is a mother and a father. Now, if through the course of events, through no one's fault, that is taken away from a child. I mean, you can have a parent that dies, you end up with a single parent. You can have a divorce, which I think is terrible. But it's not supposed to work that way. So if you have a child in foster care, you're looking for a mother and a father. And to just say, okay, well, we'll give this child to two dads, you're basically giving up on that child. You're saying, well, yeah, we couldn't find the right setup for you, so instead you're getting this.
No.
And I just reject that.
No. You know what giving up on the child is? Giving up on the child is saying, here's an opportunity for that child to have a somewhat positive life. Not be in a system that fosters abuse, neglect, that is a huge tax burden to the people, predicated on theft and all that bullshit, right? But no, if two men or two women want to take the sacrifice, take up the sacrifice to help that child, take that child out of that situation, you're really going to tell me because they are homosexual that's worse than sitting in the child foster care system? It's retarded. It's fucking retarded. This is something that only a radical Catholic like Matt Walsh could say. But it gets better. Let's play it.
Reject that totally. And I also think, frankly, that a lot of people won't like this, but I
think we've passed the point where
right. No one likes anything that we're saying. Right. A child being in foster care is far from an ideal scenario. It's very, very sad. A child going to two gay parents, I think, is worse. I think it's easily worse, actually.
Why?
It's just more disordered. It's more confusing for the child. Again, neither scenario is good. We don't like either thing, but I don't see going to gay parents as an improvement over the what they had before. So
do we know that it screws kids up, or we just sort of intuitively know it?
I think we intuitively know, but also there's been plenty of studies done about the mental health effects of kids that grow up in these, single-sex, same-sex parent homes. There's been a lot of studies done about it. But honestly, you can look at the studies, people will fact check, and they're there. I don't need studies for this.
I think how he ended the clip was, I don't really know what else you can say. I mean, this is religion 101. They have all this data. I don't even need to know. I am so wise. I have such an understanding because of a book that I don't even need to think about it. I can just assert that a child being in a home, getting 3 meals a day, having the parents at least somewhat care for the child, as opposed to the foster care system, sitting in an orphanage or whatever the equivalent is these days, sitting in that environment, not having any parental interaction, growing up in an environment where they're probably more likely to use substances, drugs, like Just all of that. It's just so fucked up that this man can walk away and just assert, not even by like actually sitting and thinking about like, oh, you know, it's probably worse for a child to sit in the foster care system than to have a home. Like that at face value is like, yeah, no shit that's better. The only way that you could think that that's worse is if you're fucking homophobic. Like look, I know it's a hyperbolic thing to say, but when you say something like this, when you're willing to get to the point where you think that just because someone's a homosexual, that child's life is automatically going to be worse, that's homophobia. I'm sorry. It just is 100% homophobia. A, because it's not logical, and B, because you are literally just inserting your bias that isn't predicated on any kind of logic. It's just what the book told you. That's homophobia 101. Okay, let's move on to the cannabis issue. Something that, again, was talked about in both podcasts, and I thought it would be, I don't know how much of these, I know we're kind of running up on time here. Maybe we'll do a part 2 where we kind of dive into some of the Charlie Kirk stuff, maybe a Patreon episode, because we're already coming up on the hour here. But let's just start with Charlie Kirk, because
You think that I have the right to live?
Oh, jeez, this is a 7-minute long clip. We probably won't watch the whole thing of this, but let's just watch Bill Maher and Charlie Kirk get into cannabis.
You do think that I have the right to live completely opposite than you do.
I think you can get as drunk as you'd like.
And you're that kind of an American, right? You're not forcing your opinions as.
I'm not here to say you can't. What are you talking about?
No, okay. So you think pot should be legal?
That's a complicated.
Oh, boy.
I have a very unpopular.
There's already a contradiction here, because he says he thinks you should be able to do as you please, essentially. But then he also thinks cannabis should be illegal. Like those aren't mutually exclusive. You either think it should be legal or you think it should be illegal, meaning that you back the idea that somebody shouldn't be allowed to do that. So he already contradicts himself. But anyways.
On pot. You know, can I tell you my case on pot?
Please do.
It's not the depression that it might be causing or the fact that it might be hurting kids' brains. It's the smell. It's the stench that drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's not hurting their brains. I mean, kids shouldn't do it. Of course, kids shouldn't. It definitely didn't hurt my brain.
But let me ask, do you think that more teenagers are doing pot today, or that before legalization or after legalization?
You know what?
Do you think usage rates are going up or down? I don't know the answer.
Oh, you'll be fascinated by it.
Before, I honestly might even just cut it off here because this is kind of the whole rest of the clip. But this is something that I think, again, religious people will come to this conclusion because they don't operate logically, right? They operate by what the book tells them. There's that when you saw Colorado legalize cannabis, the teenage rates of cannabis use dropped, like plummeted. There's a clip where I've pulled up the chart, so I won't do it again, but like, if you look at the chart, there's a very obvious drop in that use, right, concurrent to the legalization. So this is just a old oligarch idea that like when things become legal, there's like an uptick in teenagers using it, and it's actually quite the opposite. And you know, there's something they both kind of agree with, which is sad, but like they agree with the idea of that hard drugs should be illegal. I think even like with things like that, if you had heroin legalized, if you had methamphetamine legalized, I think you would see way less kids doing them. But honestly, let's just move on to the next clip, because that was basically it. That was basically it. He just said that he doesn't like the smell. Like that's his whole reasoning. And this is only something that an arrogant religious asshole can come to the conclusion of, because he doesn't like the smell. The smell. People should be put in a cage, prohibited from using it if they have medical conditions or even just mental health issues. They shouldn't be able to use it because he doesn't like the smell. Okay, let's move on to Matt or I already played that one. Let's move on to Matt
Where are you
Walsh
on marijuana?
talking about cannabis use. And I know these motherfuckers say marijuana. I say cannabis because marijuana is a slang term. Cannabis is the proper term. I know it's a small thing, but when somebody says marijuana, you instantly are like, okay, I know where you're at in that issue. But
Where are you on marijuana?
I think it's awful. I think it's terrible. I used to have a more kind of libertarian view of it.
Yeah.
If you were to go back 10 years, 15 years, my view was I don't like it personally, but
You were never a weed smoker.
I've had it. I've never been years and years and years ago. Not in adulthood. It's not for me. It's not for me. But and my view used to be, well, it's not for me, but probably all this, I kind of bought into the war on drugs thing, and all this money that we're spending to try to stop people from smoking it is a waste. And so it should probably just be legal, even if I don't like it. There's this argument from the marijuana fans that, well, it's no different from than alcohol. And we know how prohibition of alcohol worked out. And so if we're going to allow people to go out and get a drink, why shouldn't they be able to go
Worked
out?
out pretty well, I think. I think cirrhosis deaths went way down, didn't they? I mean, they did.
Yeah. So
okay. Because one thing because there was one positive to prohibition. Not going to look at like, the mass amounts of people that were incarcerated or fined or, who were trying to make a living off of it and whose lives are ruined because of it. But no, cirrhosis went down. That's the silver lining. Oh my God, cirrhosis. Yes, it's totally okay to do that to people because cirrhosis it was a success because cirrhosis went down. Jesus fucking Christ. Can somebody put a muffler on these people? Fucking A, dude. Not really. I'm a free speech guy, but come on, man. Fucking Christ. Mental retardation. That's why I associate with these people. Mental retardation. Okay, let's keep playing.
I'm not convinced by the argument for that reason. I'm also not entirely convinced that alcohol and marijuana are comparable. For one thing, an alcohol can be really bad, and
I actually agree because cannabis is way better for you than alcohol. Like it's not even apples and oranges. It's like not even comparable. The health effects, the levels of intoxication, the long-term effects on people, it's not even comparable in the slightest. But anyways,
there's addiction, and it can destroy families and lives. Alcohol is, though, at least a more
also on the addiction front, the thing about cannabis that is not the same as alcohol is alcohol you can actually develop a physical dependency to it. If you are a hardcore alcoholic and like the guy who's drinking like 2/5 a day or whatever, and you quit cold turkey, you can go to the hospital. You can be a seasoned pothead, like smoking half an ounce a day, whatever. If you quit the next day, you're going to go through the anxiety, you're going to go through all the emotions of it, but you are not going to need to go to the hospital. So this is already a retarded argument. But anyways.
It's a social lubricant.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're with a group of people and you're having a drink, it can help you kind of loosen up. You have a better time as long as you're not being excessive. Now, if somebody gets trashed, then it kind of ruins the time for everyone, and that can happen. I think marijuana is not like that.
Yeah, you know why? Because
it kind of turns you inward.
People don't really get trashed off cannabis in the same way. And also, this is just someone who obviously hasn't used cannabis in his adult life. Like, yes, cannabis is a social lubricant. What are you talking about? And also, well, bring it back a little bit because I love his take on how looking inward in yourself is such a bad thing. You know, Matt, maybe if you actually smoked a joint and looked inward in yourself, maybe you'd be able to realize, oh, hey, you know what? My Catholic ideologies are actually really not helpful at all. They're actually really hurtful. But
it kind of turns you inward. It makes you antisocial, you know? So if you're sitting around a table with some people and a couple of them are drinking a beer, even if you're not drinking, you can have a perfectly nice time. But if you're sitting around a table and a couple of the people are stoned, it's like it's lame. You don't even want to talk to that person. They've got nothing to contribute.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I think if I was sitting around a table of people and one of them was drunk or two of them were drunk, I would also feel uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with the substance. It's because of the fact that some people are on different substances and some people are not. And like someone for me who has quit drinking, like if I'm at a table and people are drunk at that table, A, I'm going to hate the smell. B, they're probably going to act obnoxious or in some way they're going to act, you know, be able to act more combative. Like there's plenty of things. And as somebody who's like currently sober, right? Like there's plenty of things from both that I can be like, yeah, you know, maybe this isn't ideal. But alcohol is 110 times worse every time on that. But whatever. We're going to make it through this, guys. We're going to make it through this clip.
Does seem to isolate people.
Yeah, I think it's isolating. I think it turns you inward. But regardless
What's
of all
wrong
that,
with that?
my opinion was
Not the isolating part, the turning yourself inward. What's wrong with turning yourself inward? What's wrong with having some self-realization and like some cathartic thought of like, oh, like thinking about yourself and who you are? What's wrong? The only way that would be wrong is if your entire life identity is like, hey, I need to fucking go buy this book. Anyways.
yeah, it should probably just be legal. But I also believe in when you get new data, you get new facts, you need to analyze them. You need to be willing to change your mind. And so we have legalized it in many places across the country, in many cities. And I've been to these cities, as many of us have, where weed is now, it's like cigarettes were 30 years ago. Everybody's smoking. And I think the early returns are not good.
You don't think Denver and New York are pretty great?
I really don't. I think they're it's quite terrible. It's not all because of weed, but just the experience of walking around, everybody's high, it reeks of weed everywhere. How has this made anyone's life better? That's my question. That's what I want to know. I'd be willing to adjust my view on this. And I've asked this question before. I haven't gotten a satisfactory answer.
Of course
But
not.
we've made weed legal in a lot of these places.
I don't think he's capable of, like, if he got a satisfactory answer, I don't think he's capable of actually having that register in his brain as a satisfactory answer. I have a satisfactory answer. People like me who are on the brink of fucking suicide and depression were able to turn that around through cannabis. I think even as the Christian, if you're going to look at like the God-fearing Christian perspective, that being alive is better than not being alive. Okay, I think that's where me and Christians, for the most part, not in every case, but 95% of cases, like, yeah, it's definitely better to be alive than not alive. I agree with them on that, okay? You don't have to be Christian to think that, but whatever, I'll give them that point.
In what way has it measurably improved life anywhere now that it's legal?
Yeah, so the fucking gotta love it. But here's, and this is a point where Matt Walsh is actually very disingenuous, is he cites the problem, like he correlates cannabis legalization with these very liberal cities who have declined. And he's making the correlation that because cannabis has been legalized, that these cities are now getting worse. And he did admit in that like it's not all the reason. But this was actually, he did another, I kind of wanted to pull up the clip, I didn't. He did an interview with Michael Malice, someone who I have a lot of respect for. And this was actually something that Michael like adamantly disagreed with him on, and maybe not disagree with him on, but pointed out is like, are you willing to acknowledge that maybe this doesn't necessarily have to do with the fact that cannabis is legalized? Because there are plenty of cities where, you know, maybe cannabis isn't even legal, but like Des Moines, right? Like a strong amount of the population smokes cannabis, and it hasn't. I mean, it's not a bad city by any means. It's like the old, you know, correlation doesn't equal causation. You know, when you see the sale of ice cream and the murder rates increase, people aren't eating ice cream and going and murdering people, right? Those things aren't mutually, you know, those things aren't connected, right? This is the same logical flaw that he's making. And I think, just to end on this topic, like I think the thing that infuriates me most about when religious people slam cannabis is, okay, fine. Let's say you don't like cannabis. Let's say you don't like it because of the smell. Fine. I don't like alcohol because of the smell. That's fine. Okay. I'm not arguing that that we should proponent this system where we throw people in a cage because of it. They are. They think that that's the way. Because if you operate in this Christian manner, if you operate with Christianity, if you operate with, oh, we need someone authoritative to make decisions for people, because humans are so infallible and so stupid that they just need it. They need it, right? And I'm not even saying that there are people who need that. There are people that probably need somebody to lead them. The difference is it should be voluntary. You should voluntarily seek someone out who is like, oh, this is someone who I can follow, who can give me some guidance, right? Not, we need to subject people. We need to impose a worldview on people and make them do this because it's the way to go. And, you know, to compare these two, you know, really all three people, Dave Smith, Charlie Kirk, and Matt Walsh, they probably all fall. I mean, I know Dave Smith for sure is, you know, libertarian, anarcho-capitalist. He's not at all authoritarian, except in the Christianity stuff. Well, not even in, and that's like, you know, not to rag on him too much, but like this is maybe I made this point already, but like this is a contradiction in like the whole like worldview of libertarianism. Is like libertarian ideology is not authoritative. Anarchy, which literally, if you break down the Latin, means no master, completely contradicts with the idea with Christianity, because Christianity is about an authoritative rule. Someone, i.e. God, who mandates his way of life onto other people. Okay, this is going longer than I thought. I think we got time for one more. Let's just how long is this clip here?
What do you
Okay. Yeah, let's just play this last let's just play this last clip on Charlie Kirk, give my thoughts on it, and we'll wrap up there. Just because we're going to be a little over the hour. This is essentially, and like there was a part before this that I thought was really insightful too, but we'll just play this last part. Basically, they kind of get into the whole idea of like, what would society do without religion? This seems to be a very common trend with people who are Christian, who think that if we didn't have religion, if we didn't have God, that society would just collapse and everybody would just evolve into monstrous, immoral behavior. Gay sex probably being one of them. So, let's just play this.
What do you think would create a better society or better action? People that think that there is an afterlife based on how you act, or people that think there isn't one?
That's a great question, because it certainly can turn people either way. It can make you fly planes into a building. I'm not speaking of any specific example.
I can't think of anything.
I can't either. But it can make you do that. You'll admit that.
Sure.
Okay.
So this is actually something I disagree with a lot of prominent atheists on. I read this book, God is Not Great. Well, I didn't finish it. Written by what's his name? Prominent atheist guy, Christopher Hitchens. And in that book, he made the argument that like basically Islamic fundamentalism was what caused 9/11. And I think if you like kind of reel the clock back, or maybe not reel the clock back, but if you look at like from this time period, I don't really think that. I mean, atheists have made the argument that like, oh well, if they weren't radicalized, then they wouldn't have done this in the first place. I don't really think that's true. I think like as a human, if you as a people endure so much suffering from another country, from another government, like regardless of what your religion is, like somebody like you're gonna find a small group of people who are gonna retaliate against that, right? I don't think that has anything to do with it. So this is something that like I think they both just kind of missed the point on, which is really disappointing. I mean, not even it is disappointing, but like not surprising for Bill Maher to come to that conclusion as well. But like, he also like, I like if in that initial question, like, do you think society would be better like with an afterlife or not having that? I think it would work way better if we didn't have that perspective. If we didn't have the perspective in the afterlife, like, I think the fundamental difference between me as an atheist and someone who's a fundamental Christian is I don't need a promise of an afterlife, of a reward. I don't need a reward to act good or to act morally. I do it because I think he makes the point in the clip, but like it's advantageous to me. Like my living situation, like if I treat people well, that's going to come back to me. That's not religion. That's not far-fetched thinking. That's in a way scientific because you can go out into the real world and prove that. That's not something that I don't need a book to know that. Anyway, let's keep playing. It's fucking buttons, man.
Also make you do like blow up Oklahoma City too.
Yes. And it can also,
I fully acknowledge.
And I fully acknowledge that it also keeps millions of people in line. Like Mark Wahlberg. I'm guessing without Catholicism, he just looks like a guy who'd be in a lot more trouble.
I think
I
don't like the idea of like we need to keep people in line. I think we need to let nature, which is, scientific, I think letting that play out and letting humans, individuals figure that out is going to be a way better system than living in a fantasy land where you need a reward to act good. Sorry, I'm going to disagree with Bill on that.
Has made his life, much more under control. So there's one. Mark Wahlberg, I think, really benefits from Catholicism. But I think there's lots of people like that. They truly are worried that if they do something out of line, illegal or immoral, that the devil will, in short order after they die, be poking them in the ass with a pitchfork, and so they don't do that. And I got to give it up. That is a positive.
Are you at all worried that when a nation becomes too secular, it might not know what it believes? There's no cultural cohesion. There's no glue that keeps it together.
Yeah, but this isn't that nation. This isn't secular. This is a bunch of fucking religious freaks.
Increasingly secular, though.
Well, thank you. I'm trying.
No, but
I appreciate it.
You are quite the evangelist for your cause of no afterlife and no creator.
You know what? It creeps up a little, but people always are going to want it. People always are going to want to believe a story. It's much better than the truth, which is that things are random. We don't know the big questions. We don't know how we got here. We don't know why we're here. We don't know how the universe started. We're alone in the universe. Is there a God? What is the nature of God? Which one is the right God? We just don't. Nobody knows. I mean, that's why they call it faith.
Do you hope you're wrong? That's the most important question.
That's a great question.
No. I'll say no. No. If heaven is what Christianity paints it as, and I think he actually has a really good response to this, but no, I don't want any part of that. I'm good. I'm good just dying and ceasing to exist. I'd rather have that 100%. I'd rather have that than have to live in a huge, abundant, never-ending void of judgmental assholes. I'd rather cease to exist than deal with that the rest of my life. That sounds like actual hell. But
Well,
anyways,
How?
Do you hope there's a heaven?
no.
I hope they figure out how I can live forever. I like it here with you, Charlie, drinking this and smoking
And
pot.
Fiji,
I'm having a
I'll
great
let you-
time. I really can't imagine it better. I mean, I can't. And maybe it is. I'm sure it is. I'm sure, people have...
But something in you probably hopes that, I don't know.
Yes.
Hitler gets ultimate judgment, or the most evil things, right? Something in you wants to see your loved ones, and
I don't think about Hitler.
no, but there's got to be a desire
A
somewhere.
lot of people just think about Hitler a lot.
Stalin, Mao.
I know,
mean,
but I'm just saying Hitler comes up a lot.
fine.
He really...
Fair enough. Let's that.
Okay, I'm gonna just take. I think this actually touches upon a really good, again, another differentiation between me as the atheist or just atheists in general. Maybe not all atheists, but at least me. The differentiation between me and someone like Charlie Kirk. There's such there. I find some, and this this seeps into law. This seeps into the U.S. criminal system, right? There seems to be such an obsession with punishment, and the only thing that I think punishment actually does is like it stems from revenge, right? Like if someone came in right now and shot my fiance, it would be a natural emotional reaction for me to be like, okay, I need to fuck this person up. I need to, like, not I need to, but like I want to do the same thing that they did to her. But you know what? I think ultimately at the end of the day, it would be a better solution to let that go and to maybe protect myself in a way that to prevent that from ever happening again. I think it's way less energy, time. I can, like, the amount of time that I'm going to spend grieving over the loss of my fiance is going to be so much better than the shitstorm that would follow if I take a gun and go seek this person out, harm him, have that family be affected, have that family come on to me, have society as a whole be like, take sides in that, and then I have other people coming at me. Like, it's going to be a way better solution for me to just accept reality and defend myself, continue to have my life be as good as it needs to be. It is a purely Christian idea. The whole thing with the justice system in general, another reason why I'm an anarchist, is like it's all predicated on the idea of revenge. As ironically, Dave Smith once said, justice is just a fancy word for revenge. And this is something I won't even say I don't understand. It's the way that religious people and Christians can like really like, because they understand if these things aren't true, if there is no afterlife, if there is no eternal punishment, then that what they're doing is pointless. And it's true. I mean, it is true that what they're doing is pointless. But in order to rationalize that, they have to have this worldview of people are going to be eternally judged and eternally punished. Look, I think people in life today should be not punished, but like I think people should be judged. If you're one of these people who are going out and being violent, like, yes, you should be judged for that. As a society, we should say, okay, this person is bad because he's hurting people, because it's not consensual. Again, going back to the logical morality versus the religious morality, right? Like, logically, yes, if people go out and hurt other people, that's wrong for reasons that actually are intrinsic, not what Charlie says is intrinsic. So here, we're almost done with this clip. Let's just finish this bitch off and then wrap up the episode.
There's a desire that there's something beyond this.
Well,
that is just.
Okay. Yes, I do, but I mean, it's very
There's just
hard to
something so
find that
arrogant
justice
about
on
that.
earth. Ask an AIDS baby.
No, don't, Bill. That's why when you say, "Hey, I'm happy here," there's a lot of suffering on earth too, and that's the
It is,
that's the Christian argument,
and
right?
some of it is we obviously can see it comes from no bad deed done. Children with cancer.
Of course, it's
And then they say, well, that's God works in mysterious ways, which is sort of a get out of jail card.
It's the
for
hardest,
any kind of non-thinking.
Admittedly, it's the hardest. We as Christians have to explain unjust suffering. Atheists have to explain everything else.
How do you explain it?
We don't. It's hard. It's a mystery. We can say God works in mysterious ways. We can say original sin. However, we don't have to explain creation or the miracle of life or love or justice.
We don't have to explain it either because it's not explainable, because we don't know. We say we don't know. That's honest. You say, no, somebody told a story a long time ago, and we're going to stick with that. That to me, I'm not trying to be insulting.
You can't offend me, trust me.
Great.
I mean that. So
All
you
right.
could be as crude or as blunt.
Okay,
I mean that. It's not.
But I find that intellectually embarrassing.
It's fine.
That's fine. What was I honestly kind of forgot a little bit what his point was.
It's a mystery. We can say God works in
Oh,
mystery.
that's right, with the mysterious ways part. This is always the thing that the camera's off there. What the fuck? God damn it, webcam. Don't do it to me now. This is the thing. This is another part that just infuriates me about Christianity. Christians, they have an answer for everything else except this one thing. This one obvious plot hole. This obvious logical hole. Not even logical, like a moral hole. Like it points at like the arrogance of it. Like, okay, you're so arrogant, you're so sure that this is the truth. But with this one thing, this one very objectionable thing where it's like, and this also just, collides with the free will argument. It's like, okay, he works in mysterious ways, but we also have free will, insinuating that, God has a master plan, but we also have, like, that contradicts, that's a whole contradictory thing in itself, but like, I feel like Christians can't even like grasp that. But this is something that is just like easy. It's like, okay, you have this God who's supposedly loving and merciful and loves everybody and all that bullshit, but he allows bad things to happen. Why? And this is it's so funny because it's the one thing. It's the one thing they don't have to answer. It's the one thing that like I said, when you attribute all your morality to a book, you take all the onus off you. Instead of having to morally answer and think like, hey, you know what? Maybe it is kind of fucked up that we give all this praise and glory to this God. We say that he's the authoritarian. We should listen to everything he has said or preached or is in the book or whatever. But when it comes to this very obvious contradiction, I'm going to take the onus off me. I don't have to explain anything. It's in the book. No, it's not even in the book. That's the funny part. It's not even in the book. It's him. It's just, God is like sitting by a fireplace smoking his pipe and he's like contemplating everything. And like, we just don't understand that. We don't understand where the hell it comes from. But, that's not my problem. Look, I know there are a lot of people that have probably tuned out by now because they hate that the religious rant that I've gone on. This is the last clip, by the way, but we're about to wrap it up. But I urge anyone who has listened through this whole thing that it is religious to ask yourself, like to just really ponder these things. I really hope you're able to do that. You know what? I have way more respect for the Christian or the religious person who has actually pondered these things and come to that conclusion, even though it's still a fucked up conclusion, it's still a fucked up worldview. I have way more respect for that person than the other way around, where people, the religious people just don't even think. They don't have to think. They don't want to think. They don't need to think. Because it's all plain and laid out, and everybody in their family did it, all their friends and whatever, the community around them does it, so they just fall in line and they do it. I think that's just dangerous. I think it's dangerous. I don't think you have to look at any perilous thing, the Crusades, the abhorrent things that have been done to women and children through like the Islamic religions, like all these like humanitarian crises that have happened in the name of religion. Like, you need to understand and think like, okay, why is that the case? If this religion is so great, if like if God is so great, then like, I don't know, why did we need to kill 12 million people in the Crusades to get to this point? What, you think your ideology is so great that it justified the killing of 12 million people? And I know like a lot of people will say like, oh, like I'm a Christian, those were the Catholics. That's like saying like, hey, I'm a neo-Nazi, they were Nazis. It doesn't fucking matter. You're part of the same game. It's like I don't know. It's like if you're fucking women's basketball versus men's basketball, you're still both playing fucking basketball. It's the same goddamn thing. Gotta put it into simplistic sports terms for the good Christians out there. Okay, I've gone long enough. Let me know what you guys. Let me just check real quick. I doubt anybody left anything. Oh, we got a couple people actually. Oh, I haven't even been reading these comments. So let me respond to these really quick. This is from Excalibur. It's not about getting a reward. Christ gave his life for us, so the best way to repay him is to dedicate our lives to him. Why does he need that? If he's so loving, if he's so forgiving and all that, like, why does he why do we need to repay him? Like, what, you're telling me that like everything with Christianity is just from the kindness of our hearts, or from the kindness of his heart? Why would you even do that if there wasn't some kind of expectation, if there wasn't some kind of trade-off? It's better to let it go. That's why God offers forgiveness. It's better to let it go. That's why God offers forgiveness. Forgiveness into what? Into the afterlife? Because if you're looking at like what's happening on the planet Earth, if you look at, like what he was talking about, like the AIDS babies, or the atrocious things that happen on Earth, assuming that is because of God, nothing about that is forgiving. An AIDS baby is not there's nothing forgiving about that. But in the afterlife, it's forgiving. Okay, well then, but you're missing the point entirely. I'm not talking about the afterlife. I don't care about the afterlife. Again, this is the carrot on the stick argument. Like you don't need to sell me I don't care about what's on the other side. The ends don't justify the means. If you're willing to tell me that all these bad things have to happen before we get to the afterlife, or like in order for us to get to the afterlife, I don't care. That's not a good moral argument. It's also important to realize that hell is simply separation from God. It's not eternal torture. Okay, I don't think that's the main Christian view, but whatever. The reason it's painful in any way is because we were made for fellowship with God. Well, I'm pretty fucking separated with God, and you know what? I'm doing a lot better than I was when I felt like I was connected to him. So if that's hell, yeah, I'm okay with going. Like I said before, like I don't want to be in a space with a bunch of judgmental assholes. So I don't think you're even reading the comments since you haven't addressed anything I said, but I'll say this anyway before I leave. If you're genuinely seeking truth and arguments for truth, you should check out Paul Copen's book, Is God a Moral Monster? He provides solid arguments for most of your questions in this stream. Okay, well, maybe that's worth checking out. I really am sorry for not reading, like just how I had the screen set up. Like I have a bunch of different windows up, so I did not see the comments coming in. So I apologize. I think I did say at some point that I was going to answer them at the end. So, but I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you giving your feedback. I definitely don't object to that. Like I said, like, look, whoever that is, Excalibur, I have a way more appreciation for that person who just left those comments than the person who will just ignore this, right? So thank you for that. Yeah, I guess that's worth. Look, I think the thing is, like, this is another thing that happens with religious people too, is I think that they kind of put their assertion, like, within, because Christianity and religion is so vague, I think it leaves a lot of room for people to put their own interpretations into it. And the difference between that and science is, because of the scientific method, like, there's no, like, really room for interpretation. Like, if I have a proof for something, like gravity, right? Like, if I want to test the theory of gravity, like, it's very simple. I can just, drop a pen, like, oh, that's gravity, right? I can go through all the proofs. I can go through the scientific method, and I can recreate that an infinite amount of times. And nothing about religion represents that. So anyone can make any kind of claim. Like, what this person is claiming, I guarantee I can think of like 2 or 3 other people who would say something different, but they would both align with Christianity, right? But anyways, I still appreciate you dropping those comments. I'm sorry I didn't read them while I was doing the live stream. I had no way of looking at them, and honestly, like, this was more, I wanted to just kind of record my voice and record my podcast. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you like what we do, leave a like, leave a subscribe, or drop a subscription. There's even an option to, maybe I'll drop in the link or the description at some point, but feel free to donate if you like what we do. Otherwise, I think we're going to do one more live stream later this week. I want to talk about the new Democratic nominee for governor. I think that would be something that would be good to look at, because I think it's just a really interesting turn of events for Iowa, and I want to talk about local stuff too. So, all right.